everybody, it's time for another ranking video, and today we're going to talk about one of the most requested topics that I have ever had, and that is Disney movies. But not all Disney movies, because there's a lot of Disney movies, specifically the Disney Renaissance. And to do that, I wanted to bring someone along that I know absolutely loves Disney, loves animation. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everybody, so I'm really excited to be on Sean's channel and to be talking Disney because yes, I love all things Disney. I have my channel, Rachel's Reviews. I reviewed the entire Disney canon, all 57 films last year.
Whoa. And
so you can check that out, and I review as many Disney and animated films. I review every single animated film, including indies, either on my blog or on my channel. So I'm all things animation, all things Disney.
So if you love this video and you want more discussion about animation Disney, absolutely head on over to her channel, subscribe, like, follow her blogs, all that fun stuff. Please go ahead and do that right as soon as this video ends. With that said, we're going to start talking about the Disney Renaissance. Now, the Disney Renaissance, for me, that's a term I've always known for, because for me, the Disney Renaissance, at least the first half of it, is the peak of like animation. That was my childhood. These are the movies I grew up with that came out when I was the perfect age to appreciate animation. And it turns out they just happened to be this incredible window of time when I was 10, 11, and these movies just happened to be coming out. But the phrase Disney Renaissance, some people don't even know what that is. I was like shocked to learn whenever I was talking about doing this video. My wife had never heard the phrase Disney Renaissance before. So Rachel, how would you describe the Disney Renaissance?
So you have to understand that the 80s for Disney, not only were the films very slow to come out, some of them were very expensive, particularly Black Cauldron is one of the most costly blockbuster movies, biggest flops ever in the history of movies, not just Disney. It was a huge disaster for them, and movies like The Fox and the Hound and Oliver and Company kind of underperformed. They just were in this kind of creative and box office slump throughout the 80s. And really post when Walt died, really they struggled in like 1967, I think he died. So 70s and 80s were both kind of rough for Walt Disney.
Didn't they call that like the dark ages of Disney? Isn't that the phrase? They actually used the phrase the dark ages for the 70s and the 80s for Disney movies.
Sometimes they're nice to call it the Bronze Era, but but it was a rough time. And actually, I just at Comic-Con, I got to hear from Jodie Benson, the voice of Ariel, and she said that literally when they were making The Little Mermaid, the animators were like they were moving out of the studio. They were making this on like just this was their last dying gasp, was The Little Mermaid, and that's how bad things were for Disney. So then they have this Renaissance, and they made a movie every year, basically, except for, I think it's 1993, I think, in between The Rescuers Down Under and, in between Aladdin and Lion King, I think is what it was. Anyway, and so they made a movie almost every year, and they are all, in my opinion, there's two that I'm not high on, but really 8, and I'd still watch those two and enjoy them, but the really 8 out of 10 for me, I really love actually, and I would have in the upper quadrant, I would say the upper like 25 of my Disney, upper half of my Disney rankings are 8 of these movies. And so they're just artistically really special, and they have great music, most of them. From a lot of times Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, and then he had further collaborators after that. And they took some artistic risks during this time. There's just a lot. There's kind of something for everybody during the Disney Renaissance.
Yeah, so, and also a lot of these stories, there's kind of one very clear exception, but they're kind of based around kind of classic stories or historic stories, and so then there's kind of a gravitas to the types of stories that they were telling. Even something like with Lion King, you see the Shakespearean influences in it, and so then it was this really kind of neat time period for them. All right, with that said, we're going to start diving into this. Before we do that, be sure to put your rankings down below in the comments section. The movies we're looking at are from The Little Mermaid until Tarzan. So there's 10 movies in there. Those are the ones we're looking at. Go ahead and put your rankings down below in the comments section. Your kind of take, any little comments you want to add on them. From there, we're going to look at the Rotten Tomatoes score. All right, Rachel, what would be your guess is the kind of top 2 or 3 on Rotten Tomatoes for these ones?
I would guess The Lion King, and then Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid. I would guess are the top 3.
Okay. What do you think is on the bottom?
I think, I don't think any of these are all that rotten, but I would say maybe Rescuers Down Under, Hercules, and Tarzan, maybe?
All right. I'm going to go through this. At the bottom, and these are pretty interesting.
And that's not indicative of my bottom. I was just trying to guess what the critics might have thought.
Coming in at the bottom, Pocahontas, 56%.
Okay.
Number 9, Rescuers Down Under, 68%. Number 8, Hunchback of Notre Dame, 73%. Jumping up at number 7, Hercules, 83%. At number 6, Mulan, 86%. Number 5, Tarzan, 88%. Then our top 4, not surprising. Number 4, The Lion King, 92%. Number 3, Little Mermaid, 92%. Number 2, Beauty and the Beast, 93%. And number 1 is Aladdin at 94%. So I was actually surprised that Aladdin came out on top.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised too. But it's a great film, so makes sense.
But then again, those top 4, like that's the window right there. My childhood, those ones that absolutely love. I just looked at my hand and realized I was holding electrical tape for no reason. So if you're wondering, humans, I fidget a lot and just grab things and start playing with it. So if ever I'm holding pins in my videos, that's why. All right. With that said, in this discussion of how fidgety I can get in real life, we're going to go ahead and dive into this. We're going to go through them chronologically, kind of give our thoughts on them, our discussion on them a little bit. And there we go. So starting way back in, I believe, 1989, was it? Yeah, 1989, The Little Mermaid. What's your thoughts on The Little Mermaid?
I could talk a long time about this. So The Little Mermaid really is a foundation movie for me. If you talk about movies that really, it not only sort of made me love movies, but it made me love music too. I was 8 years old when it came out. I remember going to the theater. We had this theater in Salt Lake called the Villa Theater that had a balcony. It was a special. And I just loved everything about it. I was a very independent kid. I liked things to be done sort of my way. And so I really related to Ariel's sort of story and hit her desire to kind of be on her own and have her own vision. And it's a beautiful movie. The songs are so great. They had over 1 million bubbles that they animated. There's an attention to detail that's pretty impressive. And it just feels under the sea. And Ursula's so great. And so I love Little Mermaid.
Yeah, so for me, this is one of those ones that, I saw it a ton as a child. And then I was probably 20 years where I didn't watch it, and watched it again, when my daughter became old enough to watch movies like this. And so watched it in the background, and then I watched it again about a month ago to actually prep for this video. And kind of what struck me is the story structure is so different than I remembered from my childhood. There's so much more time under the sea before she goes and becomes human, and all that fun stuff begins. Like I'd forgotten, wow, we're under the sea for a really long time. For me, this is one that I could see where this was the beginning of the setup for the movies that I would love. But this one isn't one that I would put in that category. Man, I love this one still. It's like, that's really good is kind of where I would put it. There's some songs that are great in it. There's elements to it that I really enjoyed. But the overall, somewhat the structure, and then the crazy third act with and the sea and stuff, kind of weird for me rewatching it. That's kind of where it falls for me in this spectrum of things.
Now, we're doing our rankings in this based on our favorite movie, not the one that we think is technically the best movie.
Correct.
And so, for me, this is actually not only one of my favorite of the Disney Renaissance, this is my second favorite movie all time. Wow. I love The Little Mermaid, and I still just relate to it very strongly. And I admit that there's some nostalgia wrapped up into that. I can't help that because it was such a foundation movie for me. But I'll watch it, and I still just feel a connection to Ariel and her journey. And a lot of people say, oh, well, she gave up all this to get a man. And that's just not true. I mean, she sings Part of Your World before she meets Eric. she has this whole grotto full of human stuff. This is a deep thing that she wants. And so, you know, I don't have a problem if people don't care for it or people think Ariel's a whiny teenager. That's fine. But I will defend her on that point, at least. She didn't do it just to meet a man. And I actually got to, at Comic-Con, Jodie Benson was there, and I got to have my picture taken with her, and I dressed in cosplay. And so it was really fun, and I love the film. I love the film. It's still one of my favorites.
All right, so for you, this is number one.
Number one.
All right, for me, I had this one at number 6, actually. So
interesting.
I was thinking it would be higher, but rewatching some of them for the first time, it actually came out at number 6, which surprised me too. Hey guys, before we continue on talking about Disney movies, I want to tell you about the number one thing you can do to support my channel, and that's to support me directly financially over on Patreon. Patreon is basically a community over where if you want to go the extra mile in supporting my channel, get some extra access and input in my channel, you can support me directly financially over there. And with that, we've got a number of different perks and different levels for if you do that, and like monthly Google Hangouts. You guys can pick some of the movies I review. You can have input into what series I'm going to rank next. A bunch of fun stuff like that. Sometimes exclusive reviews specifically for that. But the big idea is if you love what I'm doing and want me to help make it so I can keep doing it, please consider supporting me over on Patreon. With that said, let's get back to Disney. All right, moving along in our list, jumping up a year, Beauty and the Beast. Now, I'll just kick this one off. So I remember really enjoying this one as a kid, and this is the one I think for me that maybe has some of the best music that's the most memorable to me, that just kind of sticks in my head. And then it's become something really fun for me because this one is my daughter's favorite of the Disney ones. So there was a little window about 6 months ago where we watched this movie every single day. And to its credit, this is a movie that I can watch every single day, even as a grown-up, and be okay with that. But just even kind of the exploration of the characters and the relationship between the different people, it just all kind of works for me. Just a nice, fun, concise, tight story, and I can understand why this was nominated for Best Picture.
Yep, first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, this is a tremendous film. I really do love it. I actually saw it last week. They had it at AMC theaters on the big screen. That was really fun. And I have to admit, this year with the live action version, I feel like that sort of exposed some of the weaknesses of the original film, which is part of the reason why I resent those live action. And Belle can be a little bit of a snot. She can be a little judgy and some other things, but I still just love it so much. It's so great. I love the music. And you think that Howard Ashman, he was basically writing this musical on his deathbed. He died just before it came out. They moved almost all of the production up to a Holiday Inn by his house, so that literally on his deathbed he could write this music. And I think, like, when you know that somebody is doing something like that, like, you want to put out your best effort too. And I think that's why it just feels so special and feels so important. And the music is so great. And I think that Gaston is such a great villain because he's the town hero. He's everyone's favorite guy. And yet he lets one person not liking him just eat at him and eat at him and eat at him until he becomes this beast. He becomes this man. And I think that, you know, people say, oh, is it Stockholm Syndrome or whatever? And I think that's bogus because she made a commitment. She made a promise to the Beast. She said, you have my word. And that meant something back then. And so she, I think, retains her sort of autonomy. And but she sees the Beast become this different person, this different man. And, you know, you've got all the amazing vocal performances. Angela Lansbury. Whenever I hear Beauty and the Beast, that song, it just makes me cry because I love it. And Be Our Guest is amazing. And it's just phenomenal film.
Right. Yeah. I think the song Beauty and the Beast is my daughter's actual favorite song. You mentioned kind of problems with the movie, some issues with it, and that the live action kind of pinpointed or brought a light onto those. One of those that I think, the one thing that I thought the live action did better is it captured the passage of time better and the building of the relationship, where I think in the original animated one, the way the story flows and is structured, it feels like it needs a few more minutes to build the relationship and give time to it, because it just they're on bad terms. There's a fight, and then we cut a new song about how they're best friends. And you can see it, and likewise, kind of running with the plot line about back in the city and the dad going crazy and stuff. Is like, all right, the passage of time here is really unclear as to how much time has happened. But so overall, for me, I had this one ranked number 2. Where do you have this one ranked?
Also number 2.
All right, that works out nice and easy.
It's really great. It would have been my number 1 last year, but it's now number 2. So.
Interesting. All right, so I actually made a mistake. This is supposed to be I did those out of order. The actual next one is The Rescuers Down Under is actually the second one chronologically after The Little Mermaid. So we'll go back.
Poor forgotten Rescuers.
Yeah, which is the fact that I would do that ties in perfectly into The Rescuer Down Under's actual history and the legacy of things. And even some people, including myself, when we were starting to schedule to do this video, I even asked in our little group chat, should I include The Rescuers Down Under in the Renaissance? Because it feels like such this other thing, because it's a sequel to a movie that's from the Dark Ages. What's your take on Rescuers Down Under?
Yeah, I actually think it's a little underrated. I think I don't like the original Rescuers. I actually feel pretty strongly that I don't care for it. But I think that this is a really fun action adventure. It kind of has a little bit of an Indiana Jones feel to it. That is sort of, you've got these sort of action set pieces scenes, like on this tractor when they're in between the things, and you've got this Australian rat or whatever he's called, I forget, their guide, their guide, and you have some kind of romantic comedy elements between Bernard and Bianca, which are fun. You've got McLeach, which is a pretty good villain, I think, and Joanna, his whatever that is. And there's just beautiful sequences when he's on this eagle that are just so gorgeous, and so I actually really like it. And I love the scene where the John Candy bird is in the hospital getting treated by the doctors. I think that's really hilarious. So I actually really like it. I like the Bruce Boughton score. I think is a really fun sort of adventure score, and so I think it's one of the more underrated Disney films.
Yeah. So this is. I think I saw The Little Mermaid in the theater, but this is the first Disney movie I really have distinct memories of the experience of going with my family to go see this one. And so for several years, this was kind of like one of those movies we had on video. I watched it all the time and just kind of remember George C. Scott's voice and some of the little quotes that he said really stuck with me. More so, him as a villain stuck with me even more so than Ursula, really, and many of the other kind of villains on the list, and for whatever reason he was the one that stuck with me, probably because it's like kidnapping a kid and it's kind of pretty dark, and so that kind of pops when you're a little kid, but in other ways I can certainly see how it's underrated in that it's certainly not bad, and it's just forgotten and underviewed.
And it's not a musical, and the musicals are of course going to be more loved and more memorable. But
so it's gonna, if you haven't seen this one, it's worth checking out. And I'd agree with you that I saw this one before I saw The Rescuers. And so I saw this one and, found out at some point in time there's another Rescuers. Watched that one and was like, I'm going to watch the Australia one again. I like that one, not this other one.
Well, and this was the only sequel that Disney did until next year will be the second one in their Disney canon, with Wreck-It Ralph 2. Mm-hmm. So it's
which is interesting to think about that. This is the one that got a theatrical sequel and it's forgotten about. Or this is the theatrical sequel and it's
both of them are forgotten.
Where do you rank this one?
I have this at number 8.
Okay. So for me, I had it at number 8 as well. So that's impressive. That's 2 in a row that we lined up. And then Rotten Tomatoes had it at 9. All right, moving along in our series of movies, we get to Aladdin. Now, this is, I believe, the 5th grade for me, so I believe that's when it came out. I think you might have been a grade ahead of me, even though we're about the same age. So this was 5th grade. I had the cassette tape. Me and my friends would sit around singing along to the songs, listening to it all the time. I mean, this was my jam for a long time. And rewatching it, I would probably say it's the most fun of the ones on this list, of just pure kind of adventure fun. For the obvious reason being Robin Williams in it, but when you watch the movie, he doesn't show up till like 35 minutes into it. There's so many adventure and fun songs before he gets there, and then Robin Williams, of course, does the Robin Williams show, and so that's, of course, tons of fun. But yeah, that for me, this is like the most adventurous and fun of the bunch for me.
Yeah, this may be Disney's most rewatchable movie. Mm-hmm. This and maybe The Emperor's New Groove, I would say, are probably the two for me that are the most rewatchable. I can just watch them anytime. And I mean, Robin Williams is amazing in it. I just love, like, all of his riffing. It still holds up to me. It's still hilarious. He's like, I love when he's doing Prince Ali and he's like, don't they look lovely, June? You know, just like stuff like that. I love that.
And even kind of the theme of the movie being so kind of heavy-handed in be yourself. And it just kind of keeps being stated a little bit bluntly. Kind of goes back to kind of the flatness of the characters, and that we're just so blatant, obvious, not a lot of nuance to kind of the characters. But yeah, for me, that one fun memory I have with this one also is, so my years in church world would do lots of stage stuff and try and have fun with it. So one of the things I frequently did, I would sing Disney numbers, and A Whole New World was one of my go-to Disney numbers. There is footage out there in existence of that, but this is one of my fond memories of this one. I guess just one more kind of maybe negative on this one of sorts is that some of the, well, not some, a good bit of the Robin Williams humor is so culturally relevant to 1993 or 1992 that I think it doesn't age as well as you watch it and you're like, whoa, that's a 30-year-old reference to something that has not aged as well as all this other stuff going along with it. So where do you rank this one? Number 6. Interesting. So I have this one at number 3 for me. So yeah, getting controversial on there, but that's the fun of it. And that's the tricky part when you take a bunch of movies that are great and try and talk about them and try and rate them. Well, I'm not saying it's not great. It's just there's a lot of great ones in here. Rotten Tomatoes, as I mentioned before, had this one at number 1. Hey guys, one more quick interruption before we get back to talking about Disney. I want to talk about a thing I've been experimenting with called the Stardust app. And it's a free app on Apple, Android. You can get it for your device. Probably not a Game Boy, but hey, I had one there. I thought I'd pick it up anyway. But basically, it's a free app that's designed to record quick reaction videos for TV shows or for movies. It's super easy. I've been playing around with it a little bit for a few months and haven't really talked about it much because I had to decide if I wanted to use it. I've decided I really like it and enjoy it. So I post a lot of TV reviews and movie reviews over there. I can post a lot more stuff because it's just so simple to just click, hit record, select the movie, and click upload, and it's done. I don't have to do any editing. I don't have to do any graphic work. It's just done. So if you want kind of another way to kind of hear my thoughts on stuff, quick little 30-second quick 30-second reviews, reactions, please consider following me over on the Stardust app. Like I said, free. I've been experimenting with it. I'd love it if you'd follow me over there. Please consider it. Now, let's start talking about Disney again. Moving along on our list, that brings us to The Lion King. What's your take on The Lion King?
So it's just a really wonderful movie, and the animation's really great. The music is really good. It's very poppy as opposed to Broadway style. I don't really like the way that they handle Can You Feel the Love Tonight, make it a joke at the beginning, but that's a nitpick. Be Prepared is great. Probably the best villain song of all. And so yeah, love Lion King.
Yeah, I love this one, and it's one that I think as time has passed, I probably appreciate and love more. Where I liked it as a child, but Aladdin has the swords play and the genie and stuff. But as I've gotten older, that's the one that just the animation, the scope, the scale of it, the themes of it kind of resonating more, and just even kind of the nature of some of the themes. They'll hit you differently at different phases in life because the inherent nature of it's about a child growing up. It's about a parent. It's about responsibility, and you interpret that differently as a child versus when you're an adult. And that's kind of whenever I started watching with my kids, I was like, wow, there's some really meaty, weighty themes in this that I just really appreciated. And all the things you said about the amazing music to it, the backstory of this wasn't the one that they thought was going to hit the way it did, and then it absolutely, they just knocked it out of the park, both artistically as well as at the box office. This just on so many levels is such a great movie. The only thing that I would probably critique of the movie is that there's fart jokes. That I was like, I don't need this.
When you're little, man, those things like Hakuna Matata is hilarious when you're a little kid.
I know.
It's so funny. Come on.
That's my only one that I'm going to put that. If that's my only negative, that's essentially a preference matter.
Yeah.
What do you rank this one?
I rank this as number 3.
This one's your number 3. I have this one at number 1 for me.
Yeah.
Is where I have it. So
it's a great
there
movie.
You go.
Yeah.
Very nice one. A very good one. So obviously, since I have it at number 1, I don't know why I repeated that. All right, moving along. So at this point in time in the history of Disney movies, at this transition right here to the next one is where I stopped kind of watching them in theaters. So there's a set of them there that I just love, nostalgia, my childhood, incredibly well done, and then just got old enough and kind of had that cartoons are for kids. I started doing that stuff as a still kid with limited perspective on life. So these are ones I kind of saw scattershot at different times and don't have the nostalgia for. So Pocahontas, what's your take on Pocahontas?
Okay, so Pocahontas, I do appreciate some things about it, and I don't mind watching it from time to time. I think that it has one of the best Disney vocalists in Judy Kuhn, and her singing is beautiful, I think, as Pocahontas. I think the songs are, for the most part, really solid. I hate Mine, 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 but aside from that, I think they're good. I think that the ending is actually pretty strong when, when Pocahontas, they have Savages, the number where that half the, where the settlers are singing about how the Indians are savages, the natives are savages, and the natives are singing about how the settlers are savages, and it all builds to this big moment where she jumps on the rock and everything. So there are some good things. I like the fact that she chooses to stay with her people. So those are good things. Things I don't like, I hate the romance. I hate it. I think it is so... And I love a good sappy romance, don't get me wrong, but I don't know, I just don't have any, they don't have any chemistry, I just don't like it, it's so cheesy, she's so preachy, and I wish that they had made her not speak English, so that they would have to try a little bit harder, and it just, I don't know, like I prefer in the Atlantis movie, like they actually have, that movie has flaws, but they actually have the girl not speak English, and they have to sort of bond and everything, and I wish that they had done that. I think that would have made it much better. She's very preachy, and I think that I hate the villain with Radcliffe. I think he's very like one note, like greed, and it bothers me because I know that the tribe did reach out to Disney, and Disney was very resistant towards their efforts, the Powhatan tribe, and because this is a true story, and because they turned it into this sappy romance, it is kind of uncomfortable, and it's awkward, but the animation is pretty good, and so you take it with a grain of salt. I think that they kind of learned their lesson with Moana and made it a lot better from as far as telling a culture's story. It's one of my lesser favorite Disney movies, but I can still there's only a couple Disney movies that I flat out really don't enjoy watching on some level.
Yeah, it just, the whole thing just feels devoid of fun.
Yeah.
And not replacing it with something. And so that was kind of my takeaway. Rewatching it, I don't know, a month ago, and just kind of sitting there with my kids being like, all right, this is weighty, heavy. Even the color scheme of it is pretty dark.
The thing that I wonder is if this happened, which a lot of people say Pocahontas was just something John Smith made up, but if it happened, she was a little girl. And what's weird to me about Disney is you think that they would have lots of movies about kids, because the movies are, primary audience is kids. There's hardly any. There's a few that have a child Lilo and Stitch, and there's a few that have a child protagonist, but almost all are these young adult romances. And you have a chance to tell this cool story about a little girl who saves this man's life. Why wouldn't you do that? Why do you have to turn it into this cheesy romance? I don't know, but that's what they did, so oh well.
But, I mean, the big takeaway is that, this is one of the big inspirations that gave us Avatar. So you got...
I'll be grateful for that.
I guess my other kind of memories of this one, they tried to promote it the same way they did kind of with Lion King. With Lion King, they put out opening scene of the movie as kind of the first trailer, and just so majestic that it works really nicely. With this one, they did the Colors of the Wind.
Colors of the Wind.
Yeah, that music video for the song was kind of the first trailer for it. So I have all these distinct memories of seeing that and being like, oh, wow, this could be really cool too. And then I ended up not seeing it in the theater anyway. But and it didn't hit. Like, you have Disney without fun. I just don't. It doesn't hit for me.
Yeah, and like I said, the songs are, except for Mine, 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 the songs are good. But yeah, just it's not it's not all that strong a film.
Where do you rank this one?
I have it at a last of number 10.
Number 10. I had it number 9. So you line up with Rotten Tomatoes on that one, and I'm only just a little bit ahead of that one. All right, moving along to The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So for me, this is the last of all these movies that I've ever seen. I watched it 3 weeks ago, I believe, for the very first time ever. I didn't see it back in the day, and then my wife was like traumatized by it or something, like, it's so dark and weighty, and it's so she never wanted to watch it, and so then I explicitly watched it just for the purpose of doing this video. And as I was watching it, I was like, holy cow, like, Disney made this movie? Is this for kids? The Victor Hugo book, and it's so heavy, and public humiliation, and all these weighty, heavy things. And like I mentioned before with the Pocahontas, lacking kind of that sense of fun. And so that was my immediate takeaways of it. It's just kind of the 35-year-old man watching it being like, woo, man, they went for the heavy stuff on this one.
Yeah, I really admire the risk-taking that they did in just trying to do this project, and it is beautiful. The animation is so great, and I do think that the score is very beautiful, and there are some nice numbers. I like Out There. I like how it feels like a normal person singing. It feels like that's how Quasi would really sing. I think they do a good job. I think that I'm not as in love with Hellfire and Frollo as a lot of other people are, but I certainly think that is a beautifully animated sequence. And so I admire the risk-taking, but I don't think this film works in the end. I don't think that it is satisfactory, because they wanted to do this bold thing of making this Victor Hugo novel, but they kind of lost their nerve. Like, one example is they decided to change Frollo into a judge from being the archbishop in the original novel, and it makes it because they don't want to offend the Catholic Church. So they weren't willing to really go all the way and really be brave. So they just kind of went brave. And then, and it really doesn't make any sense. Like, why would the archbishop sit there and say, you need to help raise this child after he's just killed this woman? Like, and he's going to dump this baby down the well? That makes no sense. And as opposed to, if he's the archbishop, that makes sense because he's a wicked man, I don't know. So it just ends up, it just doesn't quite work. I think that it has a problem of not being able to decide who its protagonist is. It changes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's Esmeralda, sometimes it's Quasi, sometimes it's Phoebus, sometimes, and so that can leave it a little frustrating. I think the end gets a little wonky for how dark it is at times. All of a sudden you've got like molten ore coming down out of the cathedral, and you have like this sort of Home Alone-y kind of violence with characters getting hit in the head by boards and stuff, and then of course you have the gargoyles, which just feel so tonally dissonant from the rest of the movie. And when they sing A Guy Like You, it actually feels kind of mean to Quasi, especially when you know what's going to happen next. And so I admire the risk. I admire the boldness. I can watch it and kind of respect it on that level, but I don't like it in particular.
Yeah. That's really much a kind of essentially exactly kind of my thoughts on it too. There's some gorgeous animation. There's a few musical numbers that are good, but yeah, tonally weird shift when the gargoyles are there, and so dark. And the line that they're with the main villain guy, just such a weird line to try and walk with a children's movie. And so that's where I guess that's maybe even the way to phrase it. I don't understand who this was supposed to appeal to.
Yeah, and if they had made it for adults, because some people be like, oh, well, it's not for kids. I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah,
because then they have all of these childlike elements. And so I would say I wish I got like the R-rated Guillermo del Toro version of this movie. But like, that would be great. And they just did like all, like how Pan's Labyrinth is like this fairy tale for adults. I wish we got that. And I think if there was ever a time when Disney could have released something like that, it was probably, I mean, this movie got a G rating. I mean, that's how positive that's the kind of environment that Disney was at. They could have released anything, I think, if it got a G rating.
Followed up with Les Miserables, the children's cartoon, rated G.
But I think a lot of people who love it because it is something darker, and it is something that, like if you love animation and you love Disney, you're tired of getting told that you like stuff for children. And so something like this, it feels like, oh, this is weightier, this takes on weightier topics, this, so I think they like it for that reason. But, and it has, some good stuff, but I think that's sort of part of the draw, is that it is darker and that it is more for...
And I can see where people, like you said, people that want to like it because it's different, but it even within itself, the tone's off. Who am I rooting for? Who's the hero? That stuff just makes it so. I was even trying to think through. All right, don't just rate this based off of my kid. Can I show it to my kids? Don't just rate it off of it's dark and so that's off-putting. But just as a movie, there's stuff in it that just seems so off. So where do you rate this one?
Agreed. I have it at number 9.
I had this one at number 10 for me. Mm-hmm. So it was just, I was trying to think, is there anything about this that I actually liked that I could bump it up? Even the side to me that wants to respect, you went dark, and I just couldn't get there. I was like, no, this is just off. Something's not quite right here. Moving along from there, we've got Hercules. What's your take on Hercules?
Yeah, I actually really like Hercules. Hercules is a mess. It's a very messy movie. It's like they just went to a grab bag store and were just like, we're gonna take a little of that, we're gonna take a little of that, we're gonna take a little of that. Yep. And they had Gerard Scarfe, who is the director of all these Pink Floyd movies and videos. And so his influence is in there, sort of a pop art kind of a feel. You have a comic book feel. They were trying to do Superman. They have gospel music thrown in there. There's a Vegas element thrown in there. And I don't know, it's messy. I can see that it's not necessarily a great movie, but I can watch it and be entertained by it. I like Pain and Panic. I like Megara. I think she's a lot of fun. I love that gospel songs. I think they're so fun. And Hercules is kind of a bland character, but I feel like there's so much going on. There's so much to take in. I don't really mind that he's sort of a bland character. And I love, the humor's really, I think, funny. And if you think about it, this is right around the time of Batman and Robin. This is right around the time. So it kind of makes sense that this would be kind of where they would go if they were thinking, we're going to make a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Because that was what superhero movies were.
Yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway watching it was I felt the frustration of the loss of opportunity. Yeah, it's not so much that I actually hated it. It's not that it just felt so totally off, or dull, kind of like Pocahontas, or off like Hunchback of Notre Dame. But it was just, you had Hercules. That seems like you're setting that one up to be just a ton of fun. And it seems like you could pretty easily find your focus in that one. And then you watch it and it's like, what are we talking about now? What's going on now? And so many different directions. I was even kind of like trying to track along with why don't you just pick one of these paths to go down instead of going down all of these paths?
If I were to say if I have a guilty pleasure Disney movie, this is probably it. Because I know it's not like a great movie, but I really do have a hoot when I watch it. And I think that James Wood is really funny as Hades. Mm-hmm. I think he's good. But yeah, it is very messy. There's no doubt about it.
So, yeah, I don't have much to say beyond the simple fact it was like, that was too much going on. And why did you waste this one? But, or maybe that not waste isn't the right word. Why you could it feels like this one was teeing you were teed up. You should have just been able to knock this one out of the park, easily get a solid double, and instead you get like to first base, kind of. That's what it kind of felt like to me.
I kind of feel like they were, and Alan Menken actually at a concert I went to at D23, he kind of said this much, that they were just like getting kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel that in this, that they were like just trying everything and trying to be really creative, and sometimes those work and sometimes those don't work that well.
And that would make a lot of sense with what you're seeing of if they're coming off such this streak of movies, running hard, a movie every single year, and you're tired. Yeah. And so then you just start kind of not desperation, but you kind of throw everything up there and kind of see what sticks. And that's kind of a little bit what the movie felt like a little bit to me. Where do you have this one ranked?
I have it at 7.
I also have it at number 7. And looking at it, Rotten Tomatoes also had it at number 7. So that works out nice.
Look at that.
All right, moving along to Mulan. What's your take on Mulan?
I love Mulan. I think that she's a really interesting comparison to Ariel, because Ariel is obviously also very kind of uncomfortable in her own skin and just doesn't really fit in with her family. And same with Mulan, but Mulan tries way harder than Ariel does. She does the matchmaking ceremony. She's really trying to fit in, and she makes this sacrifice for her father. And so it's just different than Ariel, who does it for herself as opposed to, doing it for someone. And I love all of the scenes at the camp where she's, she's this woman, and it's sort of this interesting take on, like, Disney's take on gender dynamics is sort of interesting and entertaining, I think. And, you have basically, I think the main message is that men are sort of dirty and gross.
Pretty true. It's not wrong.
Yeah, right. And I love Mulan as a character. I love Lea Salong as her voice. Her singing voice is great. And I do like some of the songs. I like Reflection. I like I'll Make a Man Out of You. I think that her man, Li Shang, is actually really good and very studly, very cute. And there are some cringeworthy things. The ancestors I don't care for. I actually think Eddie Murphy's pretty funny in this as the lizard, as Mushu. But I think the villain is pretty bland. I have heard argued that, like, really the army itself is the villain in here and not as much the villain. But yeah, he's kind of boring. But I love, like, the battle sequences when you see all of the soldiers coming up over the mountain. I think that's really great, and I just think it has a really big heart to it. And so I actually really love Mulan.
Yeah, so this one, for me, I think I saw this one fairly right around when it came out, because really into Hong Kong martial arts movies. So the idea, a Disney movie coming out that's kind of based over in China, I better check this one out. And so saw it back in the day, and then 20 years passed until I watched it a month or so ago with my kids, and this is my type of fun. Just the nature of the story, the kind of cultural type stuff, because of some of the types of movies I enjoy. That's kind of what this one was for me. Several of the songs, I didn't realize I remembered them as well as I did remember them, but they kind of stuck in my head, and so some of the catchiness of them, so that kind of stuck with me. But those are kind of my takeaways on this one of just being one that I didn't necessarily have nostalgia for, but one that I did see back in the day and just appreciated, but never really felt the need to rewatch. And then watching it with my kids, I was like, I like this one too. There's nothing really that I love, and there's nothing particular that I disliked about it. It was like just kind of a solid, yeah, that was good. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I get that.
And where do you rank this one?
I have Mulan at number 4.
Number 4. I had it at number 5 on my list, so right around the same places. All right, moving into the final movie on our list, which is Tarzan. What's your take on Tarzan?
I think that Tarzan's actually a little underrated as well. And it was the first time that they used this software, whatever, this technology called Deep Canvas, where you could take the 2D animation and put it in front of a CG background. So you could have, and they made the decision to have Tarzan like basically sort of surfing on the vines and on the trees, and it just looks so beautiful and so great. And I actually think that Tarzan and Jane are one of Disney's best couples that they have ever had. I think their chemistry, their bond, how they each... I like the fact that Tarzan doesn't speak English. Like I was saying, that would make Pocahontas so much better. But Tarzan doesn't speak English, so they have to find ways to communicate and share each other's cultures and where they're from. And I think that's actually really lovely. And I love You'll Be in My Heart. I think that's a really beautiful lullaby, really beautiful song. And so I think it's entertaining. It's pretty scary at the beginning, and you see some blood, which is unusual in a Disney film. And with the cheetah, I think that Clayton is kind of a boring villain, but I think that he sort of fits within that sort of pulpy Tarzan kind of, like, almost a silent movie type of villain, kind of, I feel like. So I give it a little bit of a pass, but he's pretty boring, even though his death is super cool, super, super crazy. And so I really enjoy it. I think it's a good movie. I think that it has a good heart to it. I love the animation. I think, it just depends on how much of a tolerance for Phil Collins you have as far as the songs. Right. I don't mind Phil Collins, but I wish that the characters were singing the songs instead of them being background songs, because like in the Broadway musical, I think it's so much better because the characters are singing the songs, and so because a lot of their character growth happens in the songs, but since they're not the ones singing it, sometimes you almost forget that happened, and you walk away thinking, wow, how did they even get to know each other? And it's like, it was all in that song. And so anyway, yeah, that would be sort of but I really enjoy it. It's a really good movie.
So this is another one that I watched for the first time a month ago. And I'd kind of, a certain side to me had always been, because I'd heard a lot of people doing youth ministry, they loved this one. You've never seen Tarzan? How have you never seen Tarzan? Well, it came out when I was in high school and I was a angry teenage boy, so it wasn't something I would normally drift towards. And so I'd never seen it. Watched it about a month ago, and I really enjoyed it. I was, of the ones kind of I watched that I hadn't seen before, by far it was my favorite of the bunch. And I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. And just what they did with the animation, I loved the way it looked. Just absolutely loved. You were able to actually use technical terms and stuff to describe the process of how it was different. Whatever it was, these eyes noticed it and loved just even the vibrance of the colors, all of it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And just the dynamics of the characters with the Tarzan and Jane, it's a good story that you can have the fun, the adventure, and the romance, that while at the same time putting it on a level where kids can appreciate it. And, with the villain, there's a certain stockness to the him and where the story plays out. But in a certain sense, I don't care at all, because it's a fun movie, and that's kind of what Tarzan is. And every Disney movie doesn't need to be the Lion King and talk about the death of the king's son and his rise to reclaim. Like, you don't have to do that in every single movie. Everyone doesn't have to be an epic. You can just tell fun stories with fun characters with catchy Phil Collins music. That was probably the other reason that I'd kind of held off on. I was like, I have no issues with Phil Collins at all. There's no shortage of times where I'm driving in my car and on my iPhone put some Phil Collins on. But a movie of Phil Collins, I was like, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to do a whole movie of Disney Phil Collins. And watch the movie. I got no issues. No problems here. These are good Phil Collins songs. So that was my take on it. I liked it a lot more than I was anticipating, and a very solid movie. And all those teenagers throughout the years, you guys were right. It's a good one.
I feel like it's just not that often that you get really developed couples in Disney films, and I think this is a really good example. I think you have like Roger and Anita, and you have Tarzan and Jane, and I guess Beauty and the Beast. There are some that you get to know both sides equally well, but a lot of them is just like Charming and Cinderella, or the Prince and Snow White, or whatever. So this is nice.
Right. So all around, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually put this one at number 4, which blew my mind that I had it at number 4.
So I have it at number 5.
You have it at number 5. All right. Once again, we're pretty close on where we are at on these. All right. Real quick, I'm going to crunch these numbers and make my definitive list. I've actually been crunching the numbers all along. Okay. So I took Rotten Tomatoes, I took my ranking, I took your ranking, added up all the points for where they are at. Here is how the official ranking, ultimate list, very scientific, absolutely objective, the definitive list, henceforth, of the Disney Renaissance. Coming in at number 10, not a big surprise, Pocahontas. Coming in at number 9, just slightly above it, also not too big of a surprise, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Coming in at number 8, The Rescuers Down Under. Coming in at number 7 is Hercules. Coming in at number 6 is Mulan. At number 5 is Tarzan. And then 3 and 4 are tied with Aladdin and the Little Mermaid, which is kind of interesting. It's not terribly surprising because it would be that little kind of key time period. And the one that's a girl movie you gravitated towards had that one really high. One that's a boy movie I gravitated really high on. And both of those were like our movies of our childhood. So that works out pretty nicely that they're kind of tied in there. At number 2 is The Lion King. And coming in at number 1 is Beauty and the Beast. So there you go. It has been decided.
Yeah, I think that's a good list. I think I have no problems with anything on that in that ranking.
Yep. Yeah, very, very nice little list. All right, thank you so much for joining me, giving me your time, and talking Disney with me.
It was so fun. Anytime. I'm always happy to talk Disney. And and just a reminder, I really do admire and appreciate these films. You know, it's all in fun. So
Absolutely. Where can we find you on the internet?
So you can find me at Smelly LBS Girl on social media, and I've just been added to iTunes, so you can see Rachel's reviews on iTunes, which is really exciting, and here on YouTube, Rachel's reviews. And 54 Disney Reviews is my blog, so I'm kind of a little all over the place, but check me out.
All right, thank you so much one final time. And everyone, be sure to head on over to all her stuff, subscribe, follow, comment, like, all of those things. Make sure that you tell her that I sent you over there when you subscribe. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, I do TV reviews, and ranking videos from time to time. Hey, like the one that you're watching right now. But the key thing is, I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion, and thank you so much for watching.